All right, we will go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Chad Bowling. I'm the broadband manager with the Wyoming Business Council, and with us today as part of the staff here at the state of Wyoming, we have our team from CTC here. We've got Morgan Barnes, Mitch Herget, and Bridget Flynn here as part of our team. And this meeting will be recorded and then it'll be posted to our website probably later today or tomorrow. With that being said, we will go ahead and begin our webinar. Mitch, I'll go ahead and kick it off to you.
Thanks, everybody, and good afternoon, and welcome, everyone. Excited to have you here. Excited to finally be moving into this phase of the BEAD program. It feels like we started this years and years ago at this point, and finally getting to the point of signing contracts and moving forward with the program. Today, we'll be going over just kind of a quick BEAD program overview. There will be subsequent TAs that we'll be doing in the coming days and weeks where we talk about each of these topics in much more detail. But this is kind of the introductory course and what we're looking to do between now and the next 4 years. So with that, we'll move into the next slide. We're going to go over the overview of the program. Then we'll talk about a couple key subgrantee requirements. Then we'll open it up to some Q&A towards the end of this as well. Again, we'll try to cover much of this in future TAs as well as we jump into details.
And Mitch, as far as the Q&A goes, we will be taking Q&A via the chat. So feel free to write your questions in the chat whenever you'd like. We will circle back and answer them at the end of the webinar. So sorry to interrupt, Mitch.
No, thank you. We will get to all of them at the end at the very least. And if there's something we can't answer eloquently at the end, we'll push those to an FAQ that will be published on the website for everyone to look at to make sure you get the correct answer. And I would refer to that document for the ultimate answer from WBO on each of those things, as opposed to the things I say out loud here today. And with that said, we'll jump into the overview in general. Here's just a high-level post-award timeline. We received our NIST approval in November, meaning that we are looking to get our awards signed for everyone in the near term here. Hopefully in the next month or so. We have a deadline where we have to have everything signed and dusted by the middle of May. So again, hoping to push this forward in a relatively quick timeline here. Today is our kickoff. We'll be then going into quarterly reporting as it gets later in the year. Our initial milestones we'll touch on shortly, and then a fun period of ongoing monitoring and reporting for the next 4 years. And for LEO awardees, it'll be even longer than that. Some of the initial requirements after your contract is signed or at the time of your contract signing, depending on what they are. I'll just go over those relatively quickly. A short project summary, kind of update what you provided in your application to support NTIA reporting and the environmental review. That information has already gone out to all of the awardees previously, and that's something that we're starting to see back from you as well. That, along with the other item on here, completed EHP questionnaire, which is already out in your hands as well. That's something that's going to help us jumpstart that EHP NEPA process, and I'll talk about that in a couple more slides, but that should already be in your court to process and get back to us. Additionally, the W-9, an updated location list and design files. We've gone through a round of final application curing with all of you already, so that should be taken care of as well. And then there is these letter of credit or performance bond. And in some instances with the performance bond, you can submit a request to delay submission of the performance bond if needed. I'll touch on that in a little bit more detail in a subsequent slide. All right, moving on to key subgrantee requirements. So one of the things that we want to touch on here is that unlike some previous programs, including Wyoming's previous Connect Wyoming CPF program, this is going to be a fixed amount of subaward as opposed to this general reimbursement for invoices process. This has sort of been endorsed by NTIA. Many states have adopted this exact approach where legal in their state. I'll go into much more detail about fixed amount subawards and milestones next week when we go over the milestone process webinar. But just at the high level, WBO designed its BEAD program to meet federal and state requirements while still aligning in hopefully the best way to support your deployment projects. We have to balance NTIA's program requirements that have been put upon us, Wyoming Broadband Office's obligations to the state and to the federal government, as well as trying to maximize your flexibility in how you go about conducting your projects and getting efficient, effective disbursement from us on a timely manner. With that said, we developed some milestones that ideally align with how you'll be deploying your projects across the state. That includes a project plan, moving into engineering and permitting, pre-deployment activities, deployment activities, and then their network activation and program closeout for a total of 100% of your award. Again, these milestone disbursements, NTI refers to them as reimbursements, so we're going to use that language here interchangeably to align with them, but it is separate from your actual expenses, from your budget, from the cost that you're incurring. You meet a specific technical milestone, whether it could be completion of your engineering and permitting, your staging, your acquisition of materials, your actual construction, or your network activation. You get paid proportional amount of your grant award. It does not tie to those expenses specifically. And I'll go into a lot of detail of what that looks like as we get into that webinar next week. Additionally, we have milestones for Leo, which they'll be responsible for as well, but we'll get in touch on those next week. You'll probably notice in many of your contract documents that there are more granularity to these milestones. These are the broad milestone categories. We have a set amount of sub thresholds of 20, 40, 60, 80%, 100% of the BSLs, which will allow you to get paid in a much quicker manner than waiting for all of your engineering to be done, all of your permitting to be done. We've learned some lessons through the work that we've done previously on CPF, and we're looking to maximize some of the lessons learned there to, again, make things more effective and efficient for you. Again, want to re-stress the hopeful value to us and to you of not having to go through thousands and thousands of invoices through the life of this program. So I, for one, am looking forward to that. One of the other things to touch on is the letter of credit or performance bond, depending on what option was selected. You must maintain the letter of credit or performance bond until the project is officially closed out. We may reduce the required amount as subgrantees complete milestones at our discretion, something that we'll work through as we move forward. For those folks that are getting a performance bond, you may request a delay. This is because some banks need a signed subgrant in order to issue the letter of credit, and the way that NTIA had originally set it up is you have to have it at time of signing the contract, which gives us a sort of catch-22, how can you move forward? So you can request that delayed performance bond. You get 60 days. Anything more than that, NTI treats it as an automatic default. So again, it's important to move forward with that process if you are selecting that option. We will only approve delays if you have strong evidence as to why that is needed and that you're able to get it to us soon. One of everyone's favorite things is going to be the NEPA process or our EHP process as well. This is going to be a pretty big difference from what we saw with the Treasury and our CPF program. Treasury took a very light touch on how they required environmental, due diligence from the program. NTIA is going to operate the way NTIA normally operates, which is they are going to be very serious about this. As part of their requirements, they have required that WBO be part of the joint lead agency. So we partner with them to make sure that all of the NEPA and NHPA requirements are met by the subgrantees. We're here to support that. Generally, what that means is you're going to be doing a lot of the work. We're going to be validating to make sure it's correct, and then NTIA will tell us if we did a good job or not. In some cases, many of you may be eligible for categorical exclusions, which will make the approval process from NTIA pretty quickly. We still have to do all the work to get us to the categorical exclusions, but generally speaking, if the vast majority or all your project is within previously disturbed areas, this may not be a big issue for you, but we are looking to move this forward as fast as possible. One of the reasons we've already reached out to you about those project descriptions as well as getting your EHP questionnaire back is that we are wanting to move this process as fast as we can. As soon as we get that information back from you, the sooner we can engage with NTIA and get that process officially starting to better help you. And then once your contracts are officially signed, we'll be able to hit the ground running on this process. Again, we'll have a webinar later, and I'll touch on the timelines for those webinars in a later slide. But this is a very important part of the process, and we want to make sure that you have all the information that you need up front. So we're prioritizing that webinar for you guys to make sure you have that information. I think most critically is there some specific items that NTIA requires. We cannot do certain grant activities until you have an EHP finding of no effect, meaning that any sort of thing that you're working on that involves ground disturbance is not allowed into the program until we get to that point. So you need to be very mindful on making sure you have all of the diligence done before you start that part of your project. There are meeting and reporting obligations. We'll have quarterly reports as well as desk reviews that help summarize the project progress. Every 6 months, we'll take information you provide us in those quarterly reports and roll that up to NTIA to meet our obligations so it basically give them the information they're looking for and ask from you any additional information that we are required to provide NTIA. For the most part, your quarterly report should satisfy that semi-annual report that we need to do, but we'll make sure that if there's anything new that comes from the NTIA, we include that in our process, so it simplifies it for you as well. Additionally, there is an annual report where if you have completed certain parts of your program, there's additional information that the NTIA requires that we'll ask for at the end of the year. This is similar to maybe what some of you've seen or had to do for your CPF programs in various states. On top of that, for folks that need some extra support, meaning that maybe a higher risk than others, we will initiate as needed some additional desk reviews or quarterly calls or check-ins to make sure that we get things back on track. If you are in a technical assistance plan or a corrective action plan, we'll make sure that we are attentive to make sure we get you back into the right level of risk and move forward on the project. Again, we'll schedule those only as needed as a resort to make sure that we're both successful in this process. And then, of course, there'll be a final closeout report. NTIA has not given us much information on exactly what they're going to look like. I couldn't imagine it being much different than what you might be used to on some of these other programs you've worked on. But as those details become more clear, we will definitely update our program guide and make sure you have access to that information. Which is a good segue that a lot of this information that I'm speaking about today will be published in our statewide program guide directly for you guys to get all the information you need to do the work on this project, at least from our standpoint. So we'll have those in the various materials published, if not soon, if not very soon, then I guess is maybe a good way of phrasing that. And make sure you'll look out for that, and we'll make sure that there is a announcement for y'all anytime information is published by WBO. With that said, we do have some webinars coming up. The EHP and NEPA webinar is coming up this Friday. I think this is a really important one. There's a lot of valuable information for you to be gained. As Chad mentioned on this call earlier, we are recording these, and then also they'll be published in the slide deck and these recordings. So if you do miss a webinar or need to go back to something, they should all be published on the website for your access later. How quickly after the webinar, not exactly sure at this point, but we'll make sure they're getting up relatively quickly so you have access to those as well. Into next week will be the milestone disbursement process. It'll also include the more detail on reporting and audit requirements for the program. That is next Tuesday. And then we'll have portal training, and then more of a QA session on EHP NEPA deep dive. This will give you a chance to come with your questions that you've gained over the last, month, getting this process forward, and reach out to our NEPA experts to make sure we are supporting you in the way that we need to move forward. Just touching back on the portal training, many of you used our Salesforce platform to put all of you to put your applications in. Previously with CPF, we used Salesforce for that application, but it had a more manual process for submitting reimbursement and information to the state. We now have Unigrant's portal, which is what many states are leveraging for their grant management software. Some of you may be familiar with it from some of your other state work, but we'll be using that as our GMS going forward. And the portal training will help get you up to speed if this is your first time interacting with that specific platform. And with that said, we can turn it over to questions. Again, general questions about the BEAD program. Please contact Chad. His email is here as well. I think you know how to reach him. So feel free to do so. And with that, we can open it up for any general questions we may have here.
Yeah, Mitch, we've got no current questions in the chat right now, but we'll give it a couple of minutes.
Yeah, and
See if anyone
we'll
has
give it a
any.
few minutes. I'll fill some of the space maybe. Again, with those upcoming webinars, we do plan to get into a lot of these topics with much more detail. We'll go through the milestone process, how you can best kind of move through those phases and make sure that you are getting paid at the most efficient clip for the work that you're doing. And so we're more than happy to help on that. In addition, we do have in the slide deck, when you have access to it, we do have a bunch of links to the Wyoming website where you can find all of our information. You can also see access or get access to all of the federal guidance on the program, including 2 CFR 200, as well as various NEPA policy, or sorry, not NEPA, but NTIA policy information that they've published as well. Good question that have come in is the NEPA approval required for the entire project or proposed project phases? NTI requires NEPA approval for the entire project. In some edge case scenarios, they are allowing for subdivision, not segmentation. Segmentation is a legal term for them, but they call it subdivision, where we could potentially break some of these projects into multiple projects. However, we need a strong case to do so, and part of which is it does do multiply, I guess, the amount of reporting and effort that you have to put into the program as doubles the effort that we have to do as well. And NTI only allows it when that subdivision has what they call independent utility. So a few hoops to jump through. We'd like to avoid that if possible. But that's something that we'll have a better understanding if it's required or not when you submit your EHP questionnaires, and your project descriptions will help us give a good starting point on whether or not that's going to make sense for any individual programs. We'll keep that separate from the other project phasing, which is more designed to help you think about build seasons, railroad crossing permits, Bureau of Land Management permits, all the things that are going to impact how you deploy your project in the real world outside of the environmental. That will make sure that is there to accommodate you. Again, we will allow for reimbursement request or disbursement for any non-ground disturbing activities up until you have your EHP finding of no effect. From there, once you complete your milestones with required evidence, we will allow for the rest of the disbursement to happen through. So that's really kind of one of the major need to do this to pass go at a certain part of the project.
Mitch, no other questions as of yet, but I'd like to fill this time. There was some curing that was sent out to some participants recently from our office. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to return the curing that was sent from our office as soon as you can. But no other questions at this time, Mitch. Maybe we give it maybe another minute.
Yeah, give it a few minutes, and we'll
Sure.
just kind of continue to talk. We'll go into a lot of the details of the NEPA environmental as we get to that webinar on Friday. I will do a lot more discussion as it relates to the milestones and the disbursement process next Tuesday. We'll talk about all the nuance of a fixed amount of subaward, the value that provides you guys, hopefully from a level of effort perspective, as well as from our end, and then just what requirements will go from there. And then the next question coming in, how will the materials versus BSL be evaluated for disbursement? That's a really good question, and I will definitely have more things to show on Tuesday. But when you are doing your project plan milestone, which is the only milestone that isn't broken into the 20, 40, 60, 80, 100%, you're able to define what your phases are going to look like. You'll basically tie a certain number of BSLs, infrastructure, boundary around what those phases are, and any number of phases that you submit for your disbursement that take you over those thresholds of 20, 40, 60, 80 to 100% of the BSLs qualifies you for disbursement. And so those materials you submit will be tied to the phases. And when you submit for reimbursement, the number of phases or the single phase may be 40 some percent, or you may have multiple phases that come in that add up to a certain threshold. You'll be able to get disbursement for that. So it gives you a lot of internal flexibility on how you want to approach this to maximize your ability to get paid in a timely manner, because we know in the real world there are certain things that will inhibit parts of your project from getting done in a timely manner, and we want to make sure we have flexibility to help keep things good for you.
All right, Mitch. No more questions have come through. Any questions at all? Um, Please feel free to ask them now. Well, maybe for another minute or two, we'll stay on here. We're more than happy to answer any questions that y'all have.
And I think if you send them into the Wyoming email, from the slide, we will be putting together the FAQ document that we publish on the website. And as we move through these various webinars, there will be more questions. We will take those questions, we will answer them thoroughly and put them on the FAQ. That is going to be the best source of truth from our perspective. Anything, again, we say on here, we want to make sure that we codify in a FAQ so you have the best and most robust answer.
Oh, we have another question in.
We do, and this is maybe for you, Chad. Have final contracts been sent out? Question mark. Last they saw, it was still being reviewed by legal.
Yes, I will get back to you after this call, follow up internally, and I will let you know. Everyone who joined, thanks for your time today. Thanks for your continued engagement. Without you and your feedback, we couldn't make this as effective and as streamlined as possible. That's our goal here. Yeah, I look forward to seeing everyone on Friday at 11 a.m. to discuss environmental and historic preservation and NEPA. I anticipate we'll have more questions then. So, but anyone in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me with any questions you may have. Otherwise, we'll plan on seeing you on Friday. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Thanks, guys.